Hello and welcome to Route 664. I'm your host, Les Winston, and I am the spokesperson for socialsecurity.org, a program of the Endow American Network Foundation. Socialsecurity.org, a term you haven't heard and something you need to learn about. It's very important for us in this world that we live in today to be able to reach human kindness. The road to human kindness is paved with charity, being good to others, understanding each other's needs, dealing with what our communities need in the way of social services to provide for those who have difficulties from whatever source. We need to be able to find a way to help everybody get along in the world on a better basis. And the year of human kindness is upon us, and we can support that by using social charity. It's a way that Congress gave us back in 1969 that very few of us are really taking advantage of, but we need to be able to use it as effectively and as efficiently as possible because it will help all of us. It will help us reduce taxes that we pay. It'll help us increase income that we need for the future. And I'm talking about personal income, and it will also help to endow the community services that you care about. These are very important goals that we can accomplish if we use social charity as a means to do that. It sounds a lot like Social Security, and purposely so, because they're very much alike. Both Social Security and Social Charity were given to us by Congress. Social Charity is the name that we've given to a section of the code, which is Section 664, and therefore the name of the show, Route 664. We want you to get accustomed to that number, just as you're accustomed to 401k or Section 529 or 1031 or 1035. These are all sections of the tax code that you're familiar with because you've heard them, whether you're in the real estate business or in the insurance business, or if you're trying to save money for your children's college. You're aware of what these mean, what those numbers mean. Section 529 is to help your kids go to college. Section 401k helps you create a retirement plan. But there's sections of the tax code. That's how they got their name. Most people don't even realize where that came from, but it's memory of things you hear. You are familiar with something that you know about, and you know about it because it's advertised. It's discussed by your financial planners. It's a topic that people are using on a regular basis, and it's become part of our language. Well, we want the same thing to happen with Section 664. We want Section 664 to be commonplace, to be used on a regular basis in the form of Social Security. So Social Security has other things in common with Social Security. Not only were they both presented by Congress as parts of our code, they also provide the same kind of benefits. In other words, the Social Security theory of Social Security was to supplement retirement income for widows and children, and to also provide for disability benefits. And it's a social product. It's a social need. It's something that we provide for society, and social meaning that it's affecting not only the individual that's using it, but also it affects the society as a whole, because it makes for people not having to live in poverty, and it's a very important part of the support of a lot of the folks in the country today. Our guest later on today will be talking about Social Security actually, and what the position of it is in the world today, what we are experiencing in the United States with regard to our financial well-being. And we hope that you'll stay tuned for that interview. We have a very important message overall that we want to deliver, and that is that you're able to develop your own methods of reducing taxes. You're able to develop your own methods of increasing income. You're able to develop your own way of helping charity in the future. And this program, Route 664, is the road to human kindness. It's the means by which we will get to that end result, where we can help to endow our community charities and make them self-sufficient without having to worry about fundraising in the future. This is a project that's been around for a while. The Endow American Network Foundation is comprised of many people from all walks of life. We're open to the public entirely with regard to the socialsecurity.org website, and we invite you to visit that website. Also, we hope that you'll share this message with others in your circle of friends and pass it around so that people get more of an idea of what we're trying to accomplish here on this program on Route 664. The reason that most people are not familiar with 664 is because it's never been advertised. It's never been promoted. It has kind of been used by the ultra wealthy in the country for the longest time. The ultra wealthy have found ways with their highly paid advisors to avoid paying taxes. And they do that using these devices. So how did it become more available to you? By technology. Technology has allowed us to bring it down to smaller levels. It's enabled us to give it to everybody in a form that's affordable. And that's what the key to this is. You don't need to have the high-paid advisors to be able to advise you how to use these products, how to use the Social Security devices. And in those devices, we're talking about charitable remainder trusts. We're talking about pooled income funds. We're talking about charitable gift annuities. These are things that you may not be familiar with or you've heard about, but you're not totally sure what they are and how they work for you. They also have the connotation of charitable giving. And the concern that a lot of people have is, I'm not ready to give my money to charity. I don't want to give anything away to charity at this point. I need to take care of myself first. And that's a very real and very, relevant issue. You don't want to give away something that you're going to need for yourself or for your family. So how you plan for that is extremely important. And that's why using advisors who can work with you to show you how you can develop these particular social security tools in your own financial planning is very, very powerful. Those advisors are now part of a council of professional philanthropic advisors, and you can find them through the socialsecurity.org website. These are folks that are trained and professionals in this area of what we call charitable financial planning, philanthropic planning. You are a philanthropist. You may not realize it, but if you're a taxpayer, you're already a philanthropist. You're just an involuntary tax-paying philanthropist. We'd like to make you a voluntary philanthropist and help you direct your social capital in a different way. Social capital is the money that you're going to not going to be able to spend on yourself, your children, or your grandchildren. It's the money that's going to go in the form of taxes, or you can change that to charitable. If you change the taxes to charitable, you're able to reduce the impact of your money leaving your control and leaving the area in which you live, in a sense. When you send your taxes to Washington, the amount that comes back to you in the form of services is very small. Whereas if you give your money directly into the community, the amount of money that comes back to you in the form of services is much greater. And it's a much better way of dealing with what the charities need today. They also are looking for ways to solve their financial problems. And the financial problems of charities are becoming greater and greater because of the way that we're functioning right now under the issues of COVID, under the problems with our increased unemployment. We have a lot of need from the government, and the government has been a big participant in the support of nonprofit organizations. And that's something that's going to change over time. It's one of the things we're going to talk about with our guest. David Walker is going to join us in a little while. David is a former Comptroller General for the United States, and he's very knowledgeable in all of the areas that we're going to be discussing. So we can now give you a reference. His book is a great reference for you to see where we are and where we need to go with regard to how we need to change things financially in the country. The financial planning for the country is something that needs to be looked at very carefully, because in an economic world, how we function, how we deal with our economic stability is extremely important. And so we've kind of evolved over time. We started out as a tribal civilizations. We evolved to the religiosity period where you were controlled by the great books. And then when Gutenberg invented movable type, he changed this into a political world. And in a political world, we're governed by treaties and maps, and we were able to create contracts. But in the political world was also who had the most gold, who had the most land, and who controlled the most people. And there are still places in the world, by the way, that are still tribal, that are still religious, driven by religion. There are places in the world that are political. But we've also evolved now into the economic world. And the economic world occurred when two things happened. One, when the United States was trying to build the most devastating weapon of mass destruction, the hydrogen bomb. In order to do the calculations, they needed to invent the microchip. And in 1971, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, the world changed from a political world to an economic world. And we're in an economic world today, and we need to be able to get along economically. And part of that is, what is the country's financial picture look like? What is the current financial position of the United States with regard to how we handle debt, how we handle our expenses, how we are living day to day? You and I, just normal people, we have a budget. We have, we know that we earn a certain amount of money, and we have limitations on what we can spend. We don't have the ability to print money. Government's a little different, and so we need to look at what the current position of the country is and what it will look like in the future. How are we doing on time?
You're doing fine on time.
Yeah, okay.
You're right on time, Les.
We're going to be joined by David Walker
in about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. So I want to go back to the idea of the economic planning for the country. And Social Security is a tool that we believe can solve that problem. And why now? In our discussion coming up, you'll find out why it's important for us to find a new way, find a way to solve the problems of the communities, and to help the overall financial picture of the country become much more sound. And Social Security can do that. So go to socialsecurity.org, look at the website, become familiar with it, pass it around, share it with others, and let people know that this is a way for us to make some significant changes in how we do things. Wanda, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. It's great to join you. I have a quick question.
Sure.
When we hear the word these days, social, it's a good thing, right?
Yes.
And it means we're helping each other. So I thought maybe you could talk to people who might hear the word social.
Yes, social is good. Some social is bad if it's not really the people. Gotcha. If it's government socialized, if it's government socialism, it's a problem. But if it's community socialism, it's a healthy way of approaching things. We need to help each other.
Right.
So even though if you're conservative or liberal, they're both in the same area. Social benefits and social needs of the people need to be dealt with, and dealing with them in a way that's most appropriate economically, the way that's financially sound.
Great.
So we're proposing something that's social, social security, social security, social cohesiveness. There's a lot of sociological issues going on. As long as we don't go into the psychological issues, but we've got a period of time now where we need to make some adjustments, and we can do that effectively. Congress gave us the tools in 1969. We just need to use them more effectively and become more familiar with them. So Section 664 needs to be lingo that you're familiar with. And this program, Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness, is the best way of sharing that. So if you've got friends on your Facebook, let them know we're doing this kind of work here on this program. And thank you to the community newspapers for making the studio available. And thank you for being able to put this out over the air. Any other questions, Wanda?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
Actually, David's coming up, so I wanted to find out a little bit more about him, but I guess he will
Okay.
explain all of him.
Yeah, David, just let me find my notes. He was the former Comptroller General of the United States and head of the United States Government Accountability Office, the GAO, as they call it. And his objective was to help improve the performance, or the objective of the GAO is to help improve the performance and accountability of the federal government for the benefit of the people. His book is America in 2040, Still a Superpower. And I want to ask him when he comes on, this title page, the book cover, with the hole coming out of Congress, out of the Capitol Dome. Curious to how he arrived at that as a visual for the book. So David has also is an adjunct professor, I believe, at the U.S. Naval Academy.
Yes.
So we're waiting for him to join us. In the interim, fill the dead air.
What more about social? Let's see. We were talking about 13-year-olds last week, and
yes,
how it benefits children, or not children, or that age group most.
Yeah, good.
He's
okay.
With us.
Would you like to bring him in?
Yes, please. Bring in David.
Hi, David.
Hi. Good morning, David.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Nice to meet you, and nice to see you.
Same here. I just finished teaching my first class this semester at the Naval Academy, and you may not know, but I graduated from high school at Coral Gables.
Oh,
did you really? Wow.
I did.
I won't ask you the year.
69.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had a number of great years growing up in Coral Gables.
Yeah, well, Florida is the place to grow up for a lot of people. It's I was around your classmate time, so anyway, the city's changed quite a bit. I don't know how long it's been since you've been here. Yeah.
No, I get down periodically. Yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yes, it has. So David Walker, for the audience, just to repeat, David is the former Comptroller General of the United States, which is connected to the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, and your book, 2040, America in 2040, Still a Superpower. I was going to ask you how you got that cover. Why'd you pick that as a cover?
Well, I wanted to be able to have a cover that was provocative. Okay, because an image conveys, 1,000 words, as has been said. We are the cradle of democracy. We are, at the present point in time, the world's leading superpower, but we're in trouble. And a lot of it is because we don't have a plan. We don't look ahead. We don't learn from history. We don't learn from others. And we're not taking steps to address a number of large, growing, and problems, both internationally and domestically, that threaten our future in the world and here at home.
I know that one of the things that you stress is the relationship between the public debt and the GDP, and it's how it's changed over years. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about that ratio, why it's important?
Sure. I think there are two ratios that are important in trying to determine fiscal sustainability. The first of which is how much public debt do you have as a percentage of the economy? Some level is acceptable. Not all debt is bad. Some debt actually is good, if it helps to grow the economy and create a better society. But too much debt as a percentage of the economy is not good because it will end up impeding future economic growth, which undercuts additional opportunity for individuals, and it increases the risk of a future fiscal crisis. Furthermore, the more money you spend on interest, which you get nothing for, the less money you have to be able to spend on things that invest in the future or take care of challenges today. The second ratio is the ratio of interest as a percentage of the budget. And right now, interest as a percentage of the budget has not gone up much. And the reason being is because even though we're adding debt at record rates, interest rates are at historical lows. The problem is they're not going to stay at historical lows because
So
once
what is the effect of a very small increase in the interest rates?
right now we're adding debt at record rates.
What
If
do we
you end
what do
up,
we estimate that to be right now? About 28 trillion rather?
if you just want to count debt held by the public and the trust funds, it's a little over 28 trillion. If you want to end up counting unfunded civilian and military pensions, retiree health care, unfunded Social Security, unfunded Medicare, environmental cleanup costs, it's 100 trillion. All right. So it all depends on what number you want to go by. But let's deal with the number you talked
Bankrupt?
about. Pardon me?
Are we back?
Well, we're not bankrupt. I mean, we're not going to go out of business. We're not going to cease to exist. And by the way, we're not going to default on our debt because there's only two things that are guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution financially. The first is U.S. debt and the interest on that debt. And the second thing is Union Civil War pensions, which I think we've paid all of those. Okay. But
Okay.
what's important, what's not guaranteed, Social Security, Medicare, anything else the federal government does is not guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. And right now we're in a situation where we're adding debt at record rates. We're squeezing national defense, homeland security, and a number of other things, and we're not taking steps to deal with this ticking time bomb. And that's important because it threatens our future situation domestically and internationally.
Well, politicians in general don't like to talk about Social Security, and it's obvious because they haven't talked about it for the last 4 years. It's if it was anything, I don't know how far they run away from avoiding it to discuss it. It's like the third rail because they assume politically it's going to bring a problem on that if they talk about changing Social Security to some other way of doing things. What is the current right now? Statistically, how many people are really relying heavily on Social Security for their well-being?
Over 50% of Americans rely upon Social Security as their primary retirement income vehicle. It was never intended to be there. It was intended to be a foundation, which, like a house, you have to build on that foundation in order to have a habitable dwelling. It was supposed to be supplemented with private pensions and personal savings, and in many cases also with home equity, right? Unfortunately, too many people are relying on Social Security. Don't get me wrong. Social Security is a very important social insurance program. It is the most popular federal program. It needs to be retained, but it needs to be secured. Right now, because of COVID-19, the date of exhaustion of the so-called trust funds has accelerated 4 years. It's gone from 2035 to 2031. Now, what does that mean? That if we don't make reforms, that in 2031, which is not that far away, okay, everybody's benefits will have to be cut across the board 20 to 25%. That's unacceptable. So we need to recognize what we did back in the 1980s when we did a Social Security reform proposal that made it solvent, it's sustainable, and secure for several decades. We need to do it again. And it's prudent to do it sooner rather than later so that people can have greater certainty about what they're going to get, and so that we can make sure that we're delivering on the promises that we make.
When I speak to young people and I ask them if they're going to get Social Security, they all tell me it's a bad deal for them. They're not going to get it. They're paying into something they're not going to get. And in fact, a lot of them say, I don't want to report my taxes. I don't want to pay taxes because I don't want to pay Social Security. What do you say to those people? I know you have grandchildren.
Yeah, I do.
What do you tell your grandchildren about this?
Well, I have 2 children. I have 3 grandchildren, and they're wrong. Okay, here's the fact: young people don't think they're going to get Social Security, and they're wrong. They may get it at a different age. They may get it at somewhat different replacement ratio, but they're going to get it. All right. At the same point in time, seniors think they're going to get taken advantage of. They're not going to get taken advantage of, for lots of reasons. One, it wouldn't be right. And secondly, they're the most politically active portion of the population.
Yeah, well, that's the threat.
Right?
Yeah, that's the threat to the politicians. Yeah.
So here's my point. So if we reform Social Security, phase in the changes, make it solvent, sustainable, secure, indefinitely, we will exceed the expectation of every generation of Americans. I call that a win. The problem is in Washington, we have too much laggardship and not enough leadership. Bill Clinton in 1998, I was appointed by Bill Clinton as Comptroller General of the United States, and Reagan and Bush 41 gave me other appointments, okay? I worked with Bill Clinton and others to try to engage the American people on the need for Social Security reform, and we would have achieved Social Security reform in 1999 at the latest, but for his personal indiscretions that caused him to be impeached, okay? And here's the ultimate irony. The kinds of changes that we're going to make now in order to make it solvent, sustainable, secure are basically about the same as they were back in 1999, but because we're over 20 years later, they're going to have to be more significant. We're going to have less time to phase it in, but we need to do it because the alternative is unacceptable.
So if we're going to make changes to it, I noticed one of the other things you discussed in your book, which I recommend everybody read, America in 2040, Still Superpower. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere.
It's online. You get it online. You get it online.
I got a digital copy. I know I can't print it because it stops me every time. But
and you'll kill trees.
In any case, the book is a very, very clear and concise explanation of where we are, and also has some proposals on how to get out of the problem that we're in. But in an economic world, David, are we going to be competitive with China, with Russia, with other countries? Because our GDP is shrinking, and as our GDP shrinks, the debt becomes more overwhelming. How do we deal with that?
Well, let's talk about a few facts.
Okay.
At the end of World War II, the United States was 50% of global GDP. Demographics were working in our favor, and the dollar was as good as gold. At the end of World War II, the United States had debt to GDP of about 107%, which was an all-time record. But we took a number of steps to grow the economy and to bring back fiscal responsibility, and we took debt to GDP down to about 35% by 1980.
That was by increasing our GDP.
Yeah,
right?
By increasing our GDP. We didn't pay down any debt, okay?
Right.
All right, we didn't pay down the debt.
It just became a smaller percentage.
Right. Let's look at today. Today, the United States is less than 24% of global GDP and declining. The dollar is not as good as gold. Demographics are not working in our favor. We've passed the all-time record of debt to GDP, or will within the next few months, and we're adding debt at record rates. We face a re-emerging China, and I say re-emerging because China used to have the largest economy in the world and the largest navy in the world. They've been a great power in the past. They're a great power today. They passed us on GDP based on purchasing power parity. They passed us on the number of embassies and missions in the world. They're number 2 militarily and dedicated to passing us now on that. And they're trying to take a number of steps to increase their cultural influence. Believe it or not, Chinese investors own the largest movie chain in the United States, AMC Theaters. Their number 1 competitor is going out of business because of COVID-19, and they'll use that as a way to try to be able to impact the public opinion, if you will. So we are still a great country. We're still a great power, but we are at risk.
We need to be able to compete economically as well, and being economically sound is important, and our debt is one of the things that's holding us up. I'd like to have you back again, David. I think this discussion is very worthwhile, and I'd like to be able to go further in depth with you as to how some of these changes, some of the proposals that you make, how sound proposals that are making change to our economy. Thank you for joining us this morning, David Walker, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
My pleasure. Look forward to getting back to Miami.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Miami. This is Route 664, and I'm your host, Les Winston, and the spokesman for socialcharity.org. Please visit the website, socialcharity.org. Share this program. Let people know what we're talking about, because it's really important for the community. We'll see you again next week.